Have you tuned into the other podcasts that we make here at MJ Today Media? Besides The Daily Show, we produce 3 weekly titles, our flagship podcast, Marijuana Today, as well as The Green Rush and Weed Wonks. Our foundational operational principle here at MJ Today Media is to produce entertaining content that makes our audience better at their jobs and at understanding this crazy industry of ours. If you tune into all the shows that we make at MJ Today Media, you'll be as caught up and current on all the right things as you can get. Or as one listener described it one time, listening to MJ Today Media podcasts is like going to an ongoing university course in legal cannabis business. You can find Marijuana Today over at mjtodaypodcast.com, the Weed Wonks at weedwonks.com, and the Green Rush over at greenrushpodcast.net. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Tuesday, February 4th, 2020, and you're tuned in to episode 879 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. We return to Illinois for today's top story as Marijuana Moments' Kyle Yeager has a super stellar day, grabbing all of our 3 top headlines. Leading off in Illinois, Kyle details the numbers just released yesterday by the state's Department of Financial and Professional Regulation, showing that Illinois legal adult use dispensaries sold a stunning $39.2 million in legal cannabis in January, the first month that adult use sales have been allowed. That's broken down further into $30.6 million sold to Illinois residents and $8.6 million to out-of-state visitors. In the press release announcing the stats, Tori Hutchinson, senior advisor for cannabis control to Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, highlighted these social justice provisions baked into state law, saying, quote, "The successful launch of the Illinois legal cannabis industry represents new opportunities for entrepreneurs and the communities that have historically been harmed by the failed war on drugs. The administration is dedicated to providing multiple points of entry for this new industry, from dispensary owners to transporters, to ensure legalization is equitable and accessible for all Illinoisans." Unquote. With the second of 3 on the day, Kyle picked up on some big news out of Colorado, where yesterday Governor Jared Polis laid out details for a roadmap to expand access to financial services by legal marijuana businesses. This very, very long-running industry storyline revolves around federal rules making it hard for banks and financial institutions to do business with legal marijuana. While it's possible for banks and credit unions to accept legal cannabis customers, it's not easy thanks to federal laws, and as a result, they often charge marijuana businesses exorbitant fees for banking. In his press conference announcing the plan, Governor Polis pointed out that requiring cannabis businesses to operate in cash creates problems with safety and transparency. The roadmap calls for 7 main reform focuses, including providing better regulatory guidance and encouraging the use of new financial technology. This is one of those stories that you just need to read in full, not only to catch more detail on the broader plan itself, but also to click through to the detailed outline published by Governor Polis's office. This is a good story to have a solid handle on, even if you don't do business in Colorado, as it's likely that whenever the federal government gets around to legalizing marijuana, federal lawmakers will at least look at state-based models like Colorado for ideas on how to build their own legislation. Our third and final top story today is also Kyle's, as he takes us into the ad break with a wholesome story about Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang, who late last week spoke during a rally ahead of this week's Iowa caucuses and answered a question about marijuana policy in which he said he'd legalize marijuana and issue mass pardons if elected president. Mr. Yang also called for the shuttering of private prisons, saying, quote, "It's immoral and criminal what we've done to, in particular communities of color, with our system of criminal justice and mass incarceration." Unquote. Out of all the Democratic presidential candidates, Yang's drug and marijuana policies are absolutely one of the smarter and more progressive positions, but I think the best part of this video is Yang's 2 young sons, who he invites up on stage, who then spend the time running around and playing behind the curtains. It's a wonderfully warm and humanizing moment. Give this one a watch. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, MJ Today Media. If you have a legal marijuana business, service, or brand that you want to introduce to the best audience in the business of legal cannabis, then you need to get in touch with me today. Besides our regular ongoing sponsorship opportunities, we have some very special shows lined up for this year, with our first South by Southwest show happening just next month. We've been accepted as an official South by Southwest event, and we'll be recording a live show in front of an audience on March 18th in Austin. Besides that, we'll be recording some very other special episodes next month, since we'll all be hanging out at the MJ Today Media HQ in Austin. So there'll be a lot of fantastic content coming out of that week. If you'd like to sponsor that work, getting in front of the savvy South by Southwest audience, as well as our very own awesome existing fan base, then you should zip me an email to Shay at mjtodaymedia.com, with Shay spelled S-H-E-A. That's Shay at mjtodaymedia.com. All right, time for the Blitz. Marijuana Business Daily is a great chart up showing how current prices for legal wholesale marijuana in Oregon compare to their levels last year. In short, they're way up across the board. Oregon had a rough stretch there a year or so back, at least for cultivators, where prices for cannabis fairly cratered, leading to some Oregon dispensaries selling eighths for as low as $3 or $4. Right now, a pound of high-quality indoor will get you around $2,400 on the wholesale market versus just $1,800 last year. At the other end of the quality spectrum, a pound of outdoor only got you $300 last year, but will get you a more respectable $800 right now. Pop over to Bart Shaman's full piece here for more background and context. The Chicago Tribune has a good longer form piece up looking at a new business that sprung up in Chicago, offering marijuana-themed tours in which customers get to consume cannabis at private consumption lounges. I think this is a good one to read in full, as it takes an insightful look at an interesting business model that can really be built anywhere there's legal cannabis, especially if laws don't allow for commercial space where people can easily consume. Katie Shapiro, writing over at Forbes, nicely covers the launch of the Cannabis Certification Council, a nonprofit organization that's trying to establish a standard for growing marijuana in clean and contamination-free ways, and will offer up vendors the right to apply a sticker showing compliance on qualifying products. The actual standards themselves are being developed right now and should be done by this summer. Whether it's this initiative or some other, our industry definitely needs some kind of way to show that a particular product has been grown and processed in the best ways. So I'm glad to read this one today. Celeb Stoner has the unfortunate news that the marijuana products company Whoopi and Maya has shut down, with the company citing a rift in the business relationship between company founders Whoopi Goldberg and Maya Elizabeth as the reason. Whoopi and Maya first hit the marijuana scene back in 2016 and focused on cannabis products for women. Market Watch dives into the sad tale of Sundial Growers, a Canadian company that has seen its corporate fortunes rise and fall as it went from a smaller firm growing indoor vegetables to a cannabis-focused biggie with a market cap north of $1 billion, only to fall in recent months to now being worth just $133 million, around 87% of its high 6 months ago when it first went public. Late last week, Sundial announced that it was losing its CEO, COO, and executive chair. Market Watch details some of the operational troubles the company has gone through as it's battled floods and mold and quality control issues. Probably not a bad one to read today. We keep our newsy gaze up in Canada for this next story, with the province of Ontario planning this spring on allowing marijuana cultivators to sell directly to consumers. Though the way they'll have to do it is a little convoluted and involves cultivators officially selling their marijuana to the province before buying it back to resell to customers. They won't have to actually move around merchandise, but rather will simply pay the province for the right to carry out transactions directly to customers. There's a lot of people rightfully questioning the fairness and value of that model, which I think makes this a story worth adding to your list to read today. It's good to take advantage of the experiments being run with different states and Canadian provinces running various legalization schemes. This seems like a way not to do it. Our final story today takes us out in Canada as we first swing over to my corner of the country here in Maine, where U.S. customs officials have made life so difficult for a Canadian island that receives its mail through a bridge connected to Maine with inspections that the island has asked licensed Canadian producers not to deliver cannabis products to customers living there. We've covered this one before with the Canadian island of Cabello getting its Canadian mail brought over via U.S. roads, as there's just one bridge connecting it to the mainland and it's on the American side. And because U.S. Customs takes a sharp tack on enforcing federal cannabis laws, they've been inspecting and holding up the island's mail looking for cannabis deliveries, which are perfectly legal in Canada. Canada Post, the federal agency responsible for Canadian mail, says that it's working on a solution, but for now, residents of Cabello Island are out of luck when it comes to taking legal cannabis delivery. Sorry about that. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, MJ Today Media, and to all of our awesome Patreon listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the Patreon listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today. Today.
One take, Shay. One take.